One time.
Denver Mayor Michael Hancock and Denver Police Chief Robert White last week blamed some of the random acts of violence that we've been seeing around downtown Denver. And for those listening and watching, some truly bizarre incidents, including one right outside our building on the 16th Street Mall, where an individual had a large PVC-style pipe that he was just pummeling anybody who was close to him with. And that's the second one in a week or two. And now you have the mayor of Denver and the police chief attributing these random acts of violence to the city's legal marijuana. Vince is going to cue this video. I know you guys have seen this, but here we have the guy running around with the PVC. After this happened, Mayor Hancock called it, quote, one of the results of the legalization of marijuana, while Chief White urged downtown pot shops to stop selling single joints. Jordan, what do you think about these two high-ranking officials in Denver making these claims about the violence and tying them to weed?
Well, first, I would want to know, is there any evidence that these people that were performing these crimes were on marijuana?
Sure, like did they test them afterward for their
Did we
what's
know
in your
that
system?
marijuana is actually to blame for this incident, or is the person...
Hashtag pot to blame?
Right.
Did you just make a Nancy Grace reference? Oh, man.
No, without evidence, it's not a valid claim. And so to say that stopping selling individual joints is going to change things, it's kind of an interesting statement, because one joint typically, and most people, not that we have any studies to, agree with what I'm saying, but, there's no studies right now that show that one joint is going to make or break someone's psychosis level. And according to that video, just watching it, that person was not mentally stable. And to say that that's marijuana's fault, that's not very fair, because we don't know for a fact that it was marijuana's fault.
Right. This person could have, not been on anything. This person could have been on something else, for all we know. Kim, what went through your head the first time you saw those comments by the chief of police and the mayor?
Pretty much the same as you guys. It's almost so ridiculous, it's comical. No mention of mental health issues here, or anything that can be done or looked at in that regard. Just like blaming it on marijuana seemed kind of like them just attempting to distract from the actual problem, which is, again, I'm no expert, but either going to be maybe a lack of police presence on the 16th Street Mall, according to what I've read. Maybe they're not down there enough. I don't know. Mm-hmm. Absolutely a lack of, just general overall concern over mental health and, access to treatment and, when people have these types of problems. It's almost difficult for me to even put into words, because it's so ridiculous. That I saw the video, of course, I'm sure a lot of people have by now. People don't typically act like that just from smoking marijuana. I think everybody knows that. That's someone who's clearly got some mental issues or is on some very different drugs. So to me, that it was just almost so ridiculous. You just have to kind of laugh.
Yeah, sure.
And, I think that when statements that ridiculous are made, I kind of shrug them off as just sort of funny because they're so ridiculous. I think that the rest of the state and the rest of the country is seeing that and gets it too. They're kind of like, oh, okay, it's because he was able to buy a joint this happened. It's just so ridiculous.
Sure.
Like,
but
people just aren't as mindless.
It's ridiculous
about it
when
as
it's
it used to be.
somebody saying that who perhaps you expect to be saying that. This is the mayor of Denver who has brought us in reluctantly into the legal era and the police chief.
He's always been pretty against cannabis,
Oh, I said reluctantly.
I'm not surprised to hear him say, I'm still expecting more from him about every problem he can find to blame. I believe he's going to do that. And I think that it's just, they're just digging their own hole deeper, kind of. I think a lot of it has to do with their own inability to control these issues. So they're going to try to blame it on, we told you so. People know better. It has nothing to do with cannabis. It's just...
I think it's interesting because, any substance can react with any of us differently. And certainly cannabis might mix into somebody's pre-existing conditions and make them freak out in a manner that we just saw. But truth be told, we all know how weed makes us feel, and it's not that, and that's not how weed impacts a majority of the people.
Absolutely.
And so it was just a precarious thing for them to say so quickly before we could get toxicology back.
Absolutely.
It was
took a stroll through Lodo on a Saturday night at 2 a.m., you know, and then
Absolutely.
think about it. Think about the way they're putting this. It just seems so ridiculous.
Sure.
You know, okay, maybe one person, which I don't believe that this was even a cannabis situation, but even if it was, one person loses their mind on the 16th Street Mall who clearly has some mental health issues, and they're saying, oh my gosh, it's because of marijuana, we have to all kind of like freak out about it, when, you know, much worse happens, much worse, multiple times every single weekend in Denver.
Because of alcohol.
Yeah.
And you know, especially for our readers, listeners from out of town, I definitely want to let you know, 16th Street Mall is like a pedestrian thoroughfare that runs down the middle of Denver. It's kind of cheesy, it's kind of touristy, but it is what it is. Another thing that's interesting about this story is that we and other media outlets reported months ago that cannabis was legitimately increasing homeless populations at various shelters throughout the state. And one of my colleagues, Joel Warner, for the International Business Times, did a deeper dive into that last week, and his findings were fascinating. I mean, weed is bringing a lot of people to Colorado, people with jobs, people with skill sets, people with money to buy a home, but also people who are maybe spending their last couple dollars to get the bus ticket, to hop a train, to get here. And, you know, that's one of Hancock's points. So I do want to at least shout out to that, because even if he's not saying that that person was on acting crazy because they were on doing marijuana, he's saying that some of these undesirables, some of these you know, homeless folks are coming here because of the weed. And do you guys have any take on that? I think that's an interesting part of the conversation.
I could certainly see, you know, the potential for it to increase the population in that way, and
Sure.
that may be the case. I just don't see any benefit in trying to have that discussion when it relates to prohibiting marijuana, as if it's any reason why we should not legalize it.
Sure.
It just seems kind of silly. We should, you know, arrest people, put people in prison, keep them from, you know, getting good jobs, attaining scholarships, ruin their future for using a harmless plant because of these little issues that can easily be dealt with. You know, we need to increase our resources for the homeless, you know. It just seems sort of like we're looking in the wrong direction with these problems. We're, you know, can acknowledge a problem, but addressing it in the wrong way. Oh, it's marijuana's fault that we have this increase. No, instead of what can we actually do to fix it, do to change things, you know.
And it's good to see some of these communities
Distraction.
putting these excess cannabis tax dollars toward homeless help. As you said, funding the homeless. The city of Aurora, one of the biggest cities in the state, as well as Pueblo, have both put a significant chunk of change from their marijuana tax levies toward at least helping homelessness in their communities. So
And
that's
you see
exciting.
the difference too. Just driving through those different cities in comparison to Denver, you can see that difference.
Yeah, I hope so. I'm not sure if I know those were both relatively recent, but if they've already started pushing those monies out,
At least there's less that I've seen.
Yeah, sure. I think it's going. Anytime you pump money into those kinds of situations, it's going to help, and so I hope it does.
I hope so too.